stimulating hormone, which is secreted by up in your brain area, and testosterone, and it serves to concentrate testosterone in the seminiferous tubules where it is necessary for spermatogenesis. Now remember I told you, right before that egg was ovulated, before the blastocyst could implant, you needed a big surge of estrogen in mom's body. Well, sperm, as they are developing, in a sense, they need to be bathed in testosterone, like immersed in it, gaining their things. And so this protein, androgen binding protein, it finds circulating testosterone and it concentrates it in a little structure inside the testicle called a seminiferous tubule where these sperm are developing. And if you didn't have those high concentrations of testosterone, the sperm would never develop. They just wouldn't develop. And so you need this androgen binding protein in order for that to happen. And look at this, even more complex. This is a schematic up here of what it takes to get these proteins. Now this is a real big hurdle for evolution, because this is a schematic up here, and CNS stands for your central nervous system. That's a big picture of your brain, the top part of your brain. And at the very bottom part of your brain, you have another structure called the hypothalamus. Now you've all have heard of your hypothalamus and you've heard of the thalamus. They're on the base of the part of the brain. And they do a lot of functions, but one of the ones that they do is they secrete gonadotropin-releasing hormone. Man's brain, women's brain, they both secrete the same thing. Gonadotropin-releasing hormone, and that hormone flows to another part of your brain called your pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is divided up into two sections, anterior and posterior, and this particular one goes to the anterior pituitary gland. And when gonadotropin-releasing hormone hits the anterior pituitary gland, it forces that gland to release this other hormone called luteinizing hormone. And that luteinizing hormone is then released inside your circulatory system, and it flows through your blood system, and it goes in the man's body to another type of cell inside his testicle called a Leydig cell. And the Leydig cell, under the influence of luteinizing hormone, it produces a compound called testosterone. And it also produces a little bit of estrogen. Testosterone, lots of testosterone, a little bit of estrogen. Right down there. And once the body has enough testosterone and definitely enough estrogen, it sends a negative feedback saying, shut off, we have enough. So in order for you to get the testosterone, this is the kicker for evolution. You don't just have to have a testicle. You have to have a central nervous system. You have to have a pituitary gland. You have to have a circulatory system. You have to have all of these things functioning. And you know, in school and on TV, they make it sound so simple. So simple. This emerged. I love these words. Something emerged. What does that mean? This arose. What does that mean? This gave rise to. You know, those are magical words. Next time you hear that stuff, laugh at them. What do you mean by that? This gave rise to. In other words, what I'm saying is you have to have all this stuff in place now, or it's not going to work. Whew. Number 4, testicles, these Sertoli cells produce anti-Mullerian hormone. Anti-Mullerian hormone, yet another hormone. You thought women were big bags of hormone, but in this particular case here, we have all these hormones too. And this hormone is a glycoprotein that acts during embryonic development to promote regression of the Mullerian ducts in the male fetus. Wow. What in the world is that? Well, let me explain that to you. Once sperm meets egg, and that blastocyst gets in the embryo in the uterus, and it starts to develop, by default, all of these little embryos are going to develop into females. And they're going to start to develop a little uterus. They're going to start to develop little fallopian tubes. They're going to start to develop little ovaries. They're going to start to develop a tiny little vagina, all of that stuff. And fortunately, there's this little Y chromosome, and it kicks in, and it causes these Sertoli cells to start making anti-Mullerian hormone, which acts on the Mullerian ducts. And all of that apparatus I just described to you, the ovaries, the uterus, and everything, those are the Mullerian ducts. And under the influence of anti-Mullerian hormone, it says, stop developing these things, cause that uterus to regress, cause those fallopian tubes to regress, cause all of these structures to change their shape and develop into male structures. So instead of getting ovaries, you get testicles, and so on, and so on, and so on. And that's what happens with anti-Mullerian hormone. It comes in and it stops it and changes the process. Now guys, if you thought testosterone was great, let's hear it for anti-Mullerian hormone, you know. Hey, all right, you know. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing that happens. And this is it. Here it is. Here's that Sertoli cell, and that's the nucleus of the Sertoli cell. And it's taking up a space here. You can't see it because it's kind of enveloping all of these spermatogonia. This is an important cell. It's one of my favorite cells in the entire body, right there. And its process is developing this round cell through a series of processes to develop into these nice little sperm, right there. Now, you guys know what this is. What's all this frothy little stuff here? That's all the cytoplasm that's being pulled off of these, and it's going to be recycled again into here. And that's the process by which sperm develop, one of them. So, questions for discussion would be this, if I had a nice evolutionist friend. How did sperm survive before there's a functional blood-testes barrier? How did they ever develop until you had a blood-testes barrier? How did sperm develop before there was a functional system of those Sertoli cells? The result, if you don't have the blood-testes barrier, if you don't have the Sertoli cells, is what? Sterility. Sterility. And what's interesting is the genetic information to form a Sertoli cell, the genetic information to form a blood-testes barrier is carried in the sperm. It's carried in the sperm. So the information to make those is in the sperm, but you can never get sperm unless those things are already made. You can't get them. You see what I'm saying? So it's one of those classic what? Chicken and the egg. Chicken and the egg. So if somebody asks you which came first, the chicken or the egg, the answer is they came at the same time. Same time. Functional at the same time. So which came first? The blood-testes barrier or the sperm? They came